back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I am joined by Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Hey, Damon.
And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast Unlocked.
Good to be back watching for consoles with you, Damon.
And somehow these two gentlemen from opposite sides of the console war manage to remain civil week after week. I don't know how they do it. Our big topic this week is the just released April system software update for the PlayStation 5, just released today. And probably the biggest feature it now allows for is the transfer of games off of your internal hard drive to an external USB storage. Jonathon, have you gotten a chance to download the update and maybe transfer a game?
The update worked pretty smoothly. I woke up this morning. I don't know if I woke up late or not, but I woke up and it was available, so I downloaded it and pretty instantly have been able to use it. All the extra settings and whatnot have seemed to work pretty fine for me so far. I tried a little bit of transfer, and it works pretty smoothly, just as I would expect, especially since you've been able to do it with PS4 games. You just haven't been able to with PS5. You still, of course, can't play them off of that expanded USB storage that you might throw in, but it is nice to be able to have that, especially considering how small the PS5 hard drive gets to be.
Yeah, modern games are big. So yes, it's nice. It's nice to finally be able to move them off your console, because this method is still faster than deleting the game and re-downloading it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I will definitely say the PS5 download speeds, at least on my same internet as I use the PS4, has definitely been smoother across the board. So even that process has been better. But overall, it is much easier to be able to move them off and then right back via that storage. I think my Beyond co-host Brian Altano put it best, because essentially we've been playing kind of the Resident Evil resource inventory menu screen of having to adjust where we're putting our games and whatnot. And so this gives you, at least, it's like you added a couple extra spaces to be able to fill stuff in, which is nice.
I like that analogy. Okay, so now it's a new feature, the ability to transfer your games off of your PS5 internal hard drive onto a USB. Ryan, how does this compare to what is possible on the Xbox Series X presently, or even
Jonathon,
at launch?
Welcome to November of 2020, where we've had this. Yeah, no, thankfully this is a feature that the Xbox has had since launch. Same thing where you can't play your proper next gen Series X games off of an external drive, but you can at least use it as pack mule to keep games and save yourself those not only download times to re-download games, but also those bandwidth costs as well. So yeah, I mean, it's good to see both consoles have a more user-friendly choice here, rather than just being at the mercy of your internet data cap.
Yeah. Jonathon, much has been made of the speed of the PS5 internal drive. Do you think that's the reason why Sony is not allowing us to play games off of external USB as of right now, because they wouldn't be getting the same level of speed?
Most likely, that would be my best guess. I'm definitely not, I think, the most engineering well-versed for it. But I definitely think, especially knowing that Sony has said drives that essentially do meet the speeds of the internal SSD will eventually be usable to play games off of and to expand the storage of your PS5. That's coming down the line, and those will be available from third parties. We won't have to rely just on PlayStation first party storage expansions. And so my guess is that, yeah, it's coming down to a speed in the way the SSDs of that caliber are able to run these games versus just any old USB storage you're using.
And Ryan, what's your best guess for why on the Xbox side, why you can't play your Xbox Series X games off of an external drive?
It's the same thing. There just aren't drives fast enough. I mean, the only difference is Microsoft at least offers an option. The 1 terabyte storage expansion card. It's pricey. It's just the cost of that high speed flash memory, but it's there. I'm using it. It's plugged in, and I'm already the Series X has a little bit more hard drive space. Actually, a reasonable bit more usable drive space than the PS5. I've already filled mine, and I'm onto that memory card, that expansion card already. So yeah, hopefully Sony's going to have some sort of approved option soon, because yeah, it's even in this relative dry spell of games on both systems since these things launched last fall, there's still so many games out there, whether it's Game Pass or otherwise. I've already filled the internal drive on my Series X.
Yeah. Jonathan, I think one cool feature that comes with this new ability is that some games will allow you to transfer portions of the game off to an external drive. For instance, if you after you finish the campaign in a first-person shooter, you can move that over, but keep the multiplayer part on the PS5. Do we have any idea at this point, like what games are going to be supporting that feature?
Not to my knowledge that we've seen any sort of comprehensive list of, it's something that they talked about a lot way back when I think Mark Cerny did his sort of GDC adjacent description of what they were going for the internals of the PS5. That's something that they've really been bullish about. So to know that that is sort of front of mind for what this update is allowing for is an exciting option. I think it will probably make the most sense in sort of the Call of Duties of the world, and especially when Call of Duty can be above 100 gigabytes or more. It's probably not bad for you to be able to offload some of that data elsewhere.
Sure. Now, cross-generation SharePlay has been added on PS5. This means PS5 users can now share their game screen with friends on PS4 in a voice party. So I guess if you wanted to show off how Demon Souls Remastered looked on PS5, you can show that off to your PS4 friends. And I believe, Jonathan, isn't there also it's possible to let other people on PS4 take control of a game on PS5 to try it out?
SharePlay essentially allows you to virtually hand over the controller. So you could essentially not need a PS5 right now to play a PS5, and given how hard it is to get them, you may, if you're a PS4 owner but not a PS5 owner, you may want to find a friend fast who owns one, because this may be the closest if stock shortages keep up. But yeah, it's a nice little feature to have there for sure.
So wait, why isn't the DualShock 4 supported on PS5 again?
Look, it's just it doesn't allow you the full scope of the.
I get it, but it is kind of silly.
But to that point, now you could let your friend on a PS4 play Astro's Playroom from your PS5, but they wouldn't be getting any of the DualSense feedback.
And then it's just essentially a fun PlayStation Easter egg hunt. That's about what you're getting. But it's definitely nice to have there. I've used SharePlay a bit from PS5 to PS5 and on PS4. And so it's just a nice addition to that feature that I don't think we tend to think of too much, because mostly we're just playing the games that we want to be playing. But especially for people in bigger friend groups or who have bigger sort of like PlayStation friend lists that they're sharing stuff with all the time, it is definitely a nice thing to have there right now.
Ryan, is there anything like this SharePlay feature over on Xbox Series X?
Not that I'm aware of, and that's a great feature. I love that. I mean, way back in the day, the 360 had like a viewing party thing where you could all be on the Netflix app with your friends, all watching the same thing together. But I don't think today, to the best of my knowledge, there is a game version of that.
This the external hard drive feature is the big one in the new update. Jonathan, are there any other updates that are worth mentioning? I know there are some HDMI control options that make it some things that make it easier to turn off your or to get your console going.
Yeah, there's a bit of a switch for dealing with sort of your HDR settings, just giving you more options there. There's the ability to now support 120 hertz displays for gaming. So if you use a PC monitor that's up to 120 hertz, you can do 1080p 120 hertz on there. Is fully supported. People, of course, are waiting for, I think 1440p is usually the one that people are asking for most, but it was good to see that option added there. On the accessibility side, you now can zoom in the screen or adjust it, zoom in and zoom out based on your needs. That's in some of the accessibility settings, which is a nice thing. And then speaking of your storage space, what the PlayStation does is every time you get a trophy, or no matter the variance of it, if it's bronze, silver, gold, or whatnot, it takes a photo and occasionally a video, and that adds up to a lot of space. So you can now actually set at which trophy level, if any at all or none, you want it to save both photos and videos of, which is a nice just sort of time saver, because I definitely spent a lot of time at launch being like, look, I got a platinum trophy. Now I have to go delete 50 images because I don't want those taking up space on my hard drive. So a few little behind the scenes things that I think help the experience be a bit smoother. Some of it feels like it's getting it up to parity with where things were on PS4, which is, another topic in of itself. But there's definitely a lot of, I think, smaller functionality things that will play out over time that are helpful.
So what's your overall sense with this update? Is it impressive? Does it do enough to address the sort of things that PS5 owners are looking for at this point?
Yes and no. I think, to Ryan's joke, but not really a joke, a little bit earlier, welcoming me to November 2020, it does feel like a few of these things should have kind of been there from the start. I think for all that the PS5 UI does to make things kind of more minimalist and not throw 1,000 things in your face all at once, it sort of took away some of the best functionality that PS4 users really got the hang of and got used to, and then also just made some arbitrary switches that I don't think anyone asked for. I think it sounds very silly and superfluous, but one of the weirdest changes as a PlayStation player is you now press the PlayStation button on your DualSense to go to the turn off menu, whereas it used to be a hold on the PS4 and vice versa. Like the options essentially have been swapped. It's a very weird quality of life thing that I don't know why they switched, and there doesn't seem to be a good reason. But sort of small things like that would be nice to see adjusted. Of course, I think the biggest things that I mentioned earlier, 1440p support or variable refresh rate support would be great to have sooner than later for a lot of people. The M2 expandable space parity that we could be getting would be very, very nice to get again sooner than later. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that a lot of things that we're still waiting for, and I put out a tweet asking people what they still feel like need to happen, and a lot of those people were sort of saying the same things, the options I just mentioned, things like themes that no longer exist on PS5 but were a big part of the PS4 ecosystem, some UI friends list and trophy updates that could be made that the PS5 kind of switched around and not really for the better. It's one of those things where I think this is a nice step, but it feels like not too little too late, but too little right now. I feel like there could have been more that we would have seen, especially with what everyone's asking for at this point. And I think that's the biggest thing, is we don't have a roadmap necessarily for those things in mind right now.
Well, viewers, if you're lucky enough to have a PS5 at this point, hopefully you've already downloaded the system update so that you won't have to wait around when you're ready for your next gaming session. Also in the news this past week, more Sony news. There was a big report from Bloomberg about Sony possibly working on a remake of The Last of Us, the original Last of Us, possibly at the expense of a Days Gone sequel that would have featured some multiplayer, and sort of this overall sense that Sony is really just putting everything on what it would consider to be surefire, huge hits, huge blockbuster games. Jonathan, can you sort of summarize the broad strokes of all this for us?
Yeah, totally. I wrote an op-ed after this report came out, and essentially the crux of it was that it seems like Sony is really, really doubling down on the games that are too big to fail. The Last of Us, the Uncharted's, the God of Wars. And that's, I want to put it out there that of course it would be hypocritical for me not to say, I can't wait for the sequels that we're going to get. I can't wait for the next Horizon, the next God of War, the next Spider-Man, whenever that gets announced, like the next Ratchet and Clank. I can't wait for these big, big things. But I think the thing about PlayStation's history is that they always had those big things alongside more experimental risks. And I think the thing that this new report made a lot of fans worried about is that maybe there isn't a home for those risks within the Sony first party studio really anymore. And, we see things like Japan studio really just focusing to be the Team Asobi team behind Astro's Playroom. And so gone are the teams that were behind stuff like the Team Ico games like Shadow of the Colossus and Ico and the Gravity Rush team and much more. We saw such a plethora of games from that studio, and also across the first party studio portfolio. I think the worry is that there may not be a home for that stuff within the stable there. And so will we get to see risks? Will we get to see big new ideas, or will it be doubling down on what's already existed? It's worth, of course, saying that within all of that, The Last of Us remake is not considered a risk bias. We're not saying that is a risky thing to do. They would be updating and modernizing a pretty recent game that is one of their most critically acclaimed and beloved, alongside a new TV show coming up. On a marketing and like in a boardroom level, I can see why that decision is happening. But I think what the worry is that originally, allegedly, it was a new team within Sony that was trying to create this project that wasn't getting the alleged funding or support that they needed. The Ben team allegedly was really excited to continue on with Days Gone, but may not have been given that chance and may reportedly be at one point possibly having to work with Naughty Dog alongside some of their projects. Obviously, we don't have a full picture of it. PlayStation hasn't commented, but it sort of creates that space where we worry, are we going to get to see things like Shadow of the Colossus or Gravity Rush or Parappa the Rapper, or as a clip that's been going around a lot, Sean Layden, who used to be the head of Worldwide Studios, talked about Vib Ribbon back in the day, which was not a million-plus seller, was not, the biggest hit of all time. But to him and to PlayStation players, it was emblematic of the ability to take a risk, to try something fresh that went against the tide, as he said. And I think people are just worried of maybe there isn't going to be a place to go against the tide within the first party studio, portfolio.
Ryan, how does all this strike you? And how would you describe Microsoft's comfort level with taking risks these days?
Well, to answer your first question first, I think Sony is in an enviable but strange position of the fact that they have, for basically the entire last generation now, they've been cranking out mostly nothing but 9s and 10s. The bar they've set their own bar so high, and they keep hitting that bar, and it's been amazing for gamers, and they've ridden it to very deserved success in the PS4 and Xbox One generation. So I can see how that would almost sort of make you very fearful of having that streak come to an end. So I can sort of understand their logic of trying to keep it play it safe from that angle. But yeah, as Jonathan noted, it's just a real shame that they're just seemingly backing off of some of these brilliant other smaller projects that they've had over the years that have sometimes turned into larger projects. Now, with regard to Microsoft, they seem to be insulating themselves from this by the sheer number and sheer volume of first-party studios they have now. 23 of them. Now, the fair criticism of Microsoft is that they haven't really produced any of those Sony caliber hits over the last generation. I mean, we're still waiting for Microsoft to get to Sony's level, but if they're able to do so, the math is more in their favor by virtue of having 23 studios. Now, not all of those are going to be cranking out the absolute AAA, top tier stuff. You've got Double Fine in there, who has they reinvented themselves years ago, and they really specialize now at making smaller, more creative games that aren't going to have mega budgets, and they're probably not going to necessarily be selling 30 million copies, but they're creative, interesting, good games. And studios like that, but those are offset by, then you've got the 343s, you've got the Bethesdas, you've got the id Softwares, you've got all these this variety of talent of sort of across the entire spectrum of team size and budget size and scope and scale, where Microsoft can afford to have, like, let's say, Psychonauts 2 is a game I'm looking forward to. It's probably not going to sell 10 million units, but it can be offset by, something like a Halo Infinite or a Gears 6 or something from the Bethesda teams that probably will sell huge and allow both to coexist while all those the teams are all well-funded and healthy and happy.
Interesting times in the dynamic between both Sony and Microsoft. We were just sort of briefly discussing right before the taping of the show, could we be seeing the very early signs of the balance of power shifting once again, maybe a little bit away from Sony, maybe a little bit more in Microsoft's favor? I don't know. It's very, very early days, but we'll see as we move further into this console generation if Sony can keep their clear market leader status as far as these two companies are concerned. Before we go, we've got the results of last week's poll. We asked you, which is the better subscription deal? Was it Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, PS Plus, PS Now, and handily Game Pass Ultimate won with 50% of the votes. And way down near the bottom are both Games with Gold and PS Now with around 2% of the votes. So,
Damon, are you saying that Xbox definitively won something?
They definitively won.
We did it.
It's Xbox Game Pass Ultimate versus PS Plus. The winner is clearly Game Pass in that respect.
We did it.
You did it. Savor the victory, Ryan. The poll for next week, we want to know, what updates do you want for the PlayStation 5? Do you want that M2 internal hard drive support or expanded support? Do you want variable frame rate? Do you want themes? on the PlayStation 5. I know a lot of you do. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next week. And that will just about do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. We'll be back same time next week, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. on Friday with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.